Hello students. So in the last lecture I was discussing about photoconductive cell, and I discussed that what happens in photoconductive cell when there is no illumination, or when there is no light that is tracking the photoconductive cell. Then what is happening? It will have the dark resistance. Dark resistance means there is no light on the photoconductive cell, and it will have high resistance. And when this photoconductive cell will be illuminated by the light, then these photons will transfer their energy to the electrons in the covalent bonds, and after gaining the energy, these electrons will break their covalent bonds, and more number of electron hole pair generation will take place, and the resistance will decrease. So this is the graph. This is the illumination characteristic of a typical photoconductive cell. So as we can see, when the cell is not illuminated, that is when it is kept in darkness, when the cell is not at all illuminated. Actually at this point you can see that when it is kept in darkness, its resistance is very high. Its resistance is very high. This resistance is called the dark resistance. At very low illumination levels, like this, around this point, at very low illumination levels, the resistance may be of the order of mega ohm. And when the cell is illuminated properly, like when the illumination level is high, or you can say it is appropriate, then the resistance may fall to few hundred ohms. So with the increase in intensity of light, the resistance of photoconductive cell reduces. You can see the resistance of photoconductive cell reduces. And the sensitivity, so for this photoconductive cell, what is the output? Output is the change in resistance. And what is the input? It is the change in irradiance. So what is the sensitivity for such a photoconductive cells? It will be equal to S is equal to del R divided by del H. So what is the sensitivity? It is equal to S is equal to, like, sensitivity of photoconductive cell is equal to del R divided by del H, and the unit is ohm per omega meter square. Sorry, ohm per omega, again I am repeating, what is the unit? It is ohm per watt per meter square. This is the unit, ohm per watt per meter square. And what is del R? Del R is the change in resistance. And what is del H? Del H is the change in irradiation. So this was about the illumination characteristic of the photoconductive cell. Now moving ahead towards the characteristic of photoconductive cell, the other characteristics. Like I've told you that cadmium sulfide and cadmium selenide are the two commonly used materials that are normally used in photoconductive cell manufacture. So both respond rather slowly to changes in light intensity, as can be seen from the table, that is the values of time constant. So for both this cadmium sulfide and cadmium selenide, the response time is around, like for cadmium selenide, the response time is around 10 milliseconds, and for cadmium sulfide it may be as long as 100 milliseconds. So these materials, they respond slowly to the changes in light intensity. So the response time is more. You can see, as you can see, the response time is more. They are in the millisecond range. And for other photoconductive semiconductor materials, they are in the microsecond range. Now temperature sensitivity is another difference between these two materials, like cadmium sulfide and cadmium selenide. So there is a large change in resistance of cadmium selenide which changes in ambient temperature, but the resistance of cadmium sulfide remains relatively stable. So this is the another difference of in between cadmium sulfide and cadmium selenide. So what are the two major differences from the point of view of photoconductive cells. The first is, as you can see, both the semiconductor materials, they will respond slowly to the changes in light intensity, means their response time is high. And you can see here cadmium selenide is having the response time of 10 milliseconds, whereas cadmium sulfide is having the response time of 100 milliseconds. And another difference is the temperature sensitivity. There will be a large change in resistance, that is cadmium selenide is highly temperature sensitive, that is there will be a large change in resistance with a change in ambient temperature, and the resistance of cadmium sulfide remains relatively stable. So here you can also see the spectral band of this cadmium sulfide, cadmium selenide, lead sulfide and lead selenide. So in the next slide I have shown the spectral response of this photoconductive semiconductor materials. Now each photoconductor material type has its own unique spectral response curve or plot of the relative response of photocell versus the wavelength of light. So the spectral response of cadmium sulfide is similar to that of human eye. You can see this is the spectral response of cadmium sulfide. Sorry, this is the spectral response of cadmium sulfide. So it is similar to that of human eye. It responds to visible light. This is the visible light range. It responds to visible light, as you here I have written also the visible region. It responds to the visible light. These cells have a peak response in the green part of spectrum, that is 510 nanometer. 510, it is having a peak response in the green part of the spectrum. And for cadmium selenide cell, the spectral response is at longer wavelength end of the visible spectrum and ends into the infrared region. This is the cadmium selenide photocell. So here I have shown the different photoconductive semiconductor materials, their spectral response curve. This is the cadmium sulfide photocell, this one. This is the cadmium selenide photocell, the spectral response. This is the silicon photoreceptors. And then we have this cadmium, this is the visible region of eye. For the spectral region the eye can perceive. So this was about the spectral response of photoconductive cell. Now the major drawback of photoconductive cell is that the temperature variations. Like I have told you what is happening in photoconductive cell, with the increase in light intensity. With the increase in light intensity, the current is increasing, or you can say the resistance is decreasing. So with the increase in light intensity or with the variation in light intensity, resistance is getting varied. So this type of optical detectors are used for detecting the light intensity, because its resistance will vary according to the light intensity. But these resistance are also sensitive to the temperature variation. So this is the major drawback of photoconductive cell, that the temperature variation can cause substantial variation in resistance for a particular light intensity. Like if I'm not changing the light intensity, if the light intensity is remaining constant, so for this type of optical detectors the resistance should remain constant as per the rule. But since the resistance is also sensitive to the temperature change or the variations in the temperature, so if there is any change in the temperature, it will cause the resistance to change even if the light intensity is constant. So this is the major drawback of this type of photoconductive cells. So I'm ending this lecture here. Thank you.